A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine. Thank you for joining us as the second half of the year gets underway. Can't quite believe we're somehow in July, but there we go. The home run till Christmas, and I reckon it'll just be a couple of weeks until we hear that first Boney M in your local supermarket as we come at the end of the year. It is a second half of the year that has much to be excited about from a Dan Really Likes Wine perspective, principally because I'm going back to school. And this is something I promised I'd never do. I remember 2001 handing in my thesis for my honours English degree at WSET and promising that never again would I do anything so foolish as to study. And I was pretty good to my word until a few years ago when a very convincing and persuasive lady named Cathy talked me into doing my WSET exams. I really enjoyed them. I got through level 2. And I'm now preparing to do level 3. And it's taken a while. Minor things like COVID have held us up somewhat. But during the course of this month, I shall be in lectures, I shall be working, and I shall be preparing for the first weekend in August when the WSET 3 exam takes place. And when hopefully I can add another qualification to my wine resume. And I'm genuinely excited about doing this, both because having it, I think, is a pretty cool and important thing to do, but also the process is one where it's not just about getting that piece of paper at the end, it's about what you learn along the way to get said piece of paper. And the WSET system is one that's been used for a long time now. It's recognized all over the world, and it just helps you to get a greater understanding of the wine you're drinking, appreciating, hopefully enjoying, but even if not, understanding why you're not, and being able to then pass that on to other people, which, when you're hosting a wine show twice a week, is a rather important thing to be able to do. And so today, as a shameless attempt to ensure that I somehow get through my study and the exam thereafter, I've roped in the aforementioned Cathy, who is, of course, Cathy Marston. Cathy is one of South Africa's top wine judges, wine educators, wine people. And together with Andrew Shelly, who's been very generous with his time over the last while, they're going to be guiding me through what I need to do, guiding you through what WSET is, both to get an understanding and possibly convince you to think about it if you are in the wine world or you just enjoy wine and you'd like to know a little more about it. And then I have not one, not two, but 3 graduates of WSET 3, and collectively I'm going to be leaning on them to find out exactly what I need to do to make sure I get through this course, nail it, and come away with, if not top honours, then at least a certificate and the knowledge that I've moved one up the ranks of the WSET graduate. So a really exciting show for me today, very personal one, but also one that I think is going to introduce you all to something quite exciting in the wine world and possibly spark some interest in doing a little more study yourself. So it's a WSET celebration today as I head back to school. Before we get into it, though, let's have a quick look at the latest wine news. This is well done to Takara. And if you think back to probably the last half dozen times we've been chatting to either Stuart Buerter or Carl Lambert around Takara, it's been their white wines that have been doing particularly well. They've been doing some great stuff with grapes coming out from the other side of the mountain out Elgin Way. But their reds have always been, for me, the signature. And this is a reminder of how well they do them. This is the Reserve Collection Cabernet Sauvignon from 2021. Best in show at the Decanter World Wine Awards. Now, granted, not an hour goes by without another wine awards show somewhere in the world. And we've had several of them here on the show in the last few weeks. But this is a big one. This is Decanter. This has got a very, very impressive army of judges. And for this Cabernet Sauvignon to get that kind of accolade is great for Takara, it's great for Stellenbosch, it's great for South African Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's a nod to 2021 as an exceptional vintage as well. So congratulations to Stuart and the winemaking team and Carl and the crew at Takara. Yes, it's great for Takara themselves, but it's pretty good for South Africa as well. The Winemaker's Lunch. This is out at Blauklippen at the end of August, the beginning of August, 2nd of August. Your chance to go along and just have some fun where you get a whole lot of wine that's been very carefully selected to pair up with food from the Blauklippen kitchen. And so you've got Noreen, a really cool winemaker who would love to share some of her favorites with you. And often with these, some wines you recognize, but some that maybe you haven't tried before, either you didn't know they made them, or it's an older vintage, or it's something a touch experimental. I'm not sure what's coming. I do know that what does will be very entertaining, very interesting, and work rather well with lunch. So if 2nd of August is sitting open, I will not be going because I shall be sitting in a dark corner, terrified ahead of my exam the next day. But if you're not writing WSET 3 on the 3rd, then the 2nd of August at Blauklippen sounds like a very good idea indeed. And then this is a discovery. This is a dinner that you can have a look at with Nederburg. Not just one, though. They're all over the country. It is the roadshow that Nederburg's taken. Nederburg been in the press quite a lot over the last little while, particularly because of that big result at the Investec Trophy Wine Show with the Nederburg Winemakers Reserve Shiraz getting the best red on show and getting plenty of people talking about it. Well, Nederburg are going to increase the scope of that conversation, taking off not just to Johannesburg and to Cape Town, Durban, but a couple of other smaller pockets of wine drinking South Africa, and charging with winemakers and tow around the country and celebrating one of South Africa's more revered wine houses. Head over to Nederburg's platforms to find out exactly when and see if you can be part of a pretty cool selection of events. All right, well, welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this Monday, and a WSET Monday it is. So let's meet my quintet of guests for today. Professor Cathy Marston and Dr. Andrew Shelly, or thereabouts. Guys, welcome both of you. And then lovely to have Tendai, Chido and Jemma as well, whose ranks I hope to be joining in just over a month. Right now, I shall defer to all three of you as existing students, but I'm very excited to tap into not just your success, but also what it has meant to you, because I know that for all of you, having this particular accolade has been very important. First up, let's just set a broader picture. For some of you, WSET might be something you're not too familiar with. So, Cathy, I'll ask you to introduce those people who really know this space so well. What is WSET? Why is it such a gold standard for wine education around the world?
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for having us here, Dan. I just want to really apologise for all backdrop. I'm actually talking to you here from an Airbnb in Modena in Italy, and it's very close to the Maserati factory, which is why there's all these lovely pictures behind me, and I have possibly the most disgusting wine glass in the world ever. Certainly the worst one that's ever been on your show. So I apologise for both those things. Okay, so WSET, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, and it was set up in London just over 50 years ago now. And the idea was that it was meant to educate people in the wine trade, because although you might not think that England is a particularly winey country, although it's becoming more and more winey, it's the centre of the wine trade. There's a lot of wine that's actually bought and sold via London. So because of that, they needed to educate people. So they started off teaching people in the wine trade, and then they expanded and they started teaching people in hospitality. And now they teach everybody, literally. They are by a country mile the biggest wine and spirit educational authority in the world. They're the industry standard courses in over 80 countries around the world. You can do their qualifications in 19 different languages, and more than 142,000 people in the last 12 months have sat a WSET exam. So these are really, really big. They are written and overseen by masters of wine, by in-industry experts in every wine producing country in the world. So you're really getting all your information hot off the press and, you know, very, very much up to date, particularly as I think Tendai is probably going to tell you when it comes to the diploma, which is our flagship qualification. All the books and all the information for that is online, so that we can actually, you know, sort of keep it up to date and literally up to the minute for everybody. And that's what we do. We teach 4 different levels of wine course here in South Africa. So level 1, which is a 1-day, lovely, relaxed, fun course, perhaps for people who've just got an interest in wine, or for people who've got their first job in hospitality and they're not normally wine drinkers and they just want to know how to do their job better. Level 2, which is the fun level, the most popular level, we've actually just had to put an extra level 2 course in Joburg literally this weekend because we've got so much demand for it. So we're hoping that's going to get some more people involved in that course. That's where we introduce international wines for the first time. So that's mainly all on international wines. And then the level 3, which is what you're doing, which is high powered, to say the least. I mean, you've bitten off quite a big chunk of stuff here. So I think we are going to scare you. I'm sorry, we probably will try and scare you a little bit, but it is one of the most worthwhile qualifications in wine that you can do. And when you pass it, you really know you've got yourself something there. And then after that, you know, if we haven't put you off completely by the level 3, then we hope to see you on level 4. I say Tendai is probably going to tell you a bit more about that because he's halfway through, looking to complete it later on this year. And that is basically the equivalent almost of a degree in wine and wine communication. That's a 2-year course. And at the end of that, that's going to fit you to be an international wine buyer, a head of marketing at a UK supermarket, a global brand ambassador. All sorts of doors are going to open to you if you become DIP WSET.
The thought of just WSET 3 is terrifying me, and I've been Googling what wine to pair with beta blockers as I begin my study. The thought of the diploma is far too much to even begin to consider, but I will let Tendai delve into it just a little later. Andrew, give us the basics here. If somebody is embarking on one of these courses, what does it entail? What should you be prepared for? I know I've got mates watching this, in fact, probably my mother watching this, thinking, this sounds brilliant. I'm just going to drink vast amounts of wine and then I'll just re-enroll every second week and keep on doing it. I suspect it's a little more detailed than that. How does it actually work?
Well, hi, Dan, and thanks for having us on the show today. I would first off to say that you really need to like wine. So I think you've pretty much got that covered. Secondly, you need to want to know a little bit about the detail about things, taste things differently and taste different wines. It's important to have an interest in a broad spectrum of wine. If you only like a chilled Sauvignon Blanc with 14 blocks of ice in it, then probably you should start at level 1. You drinking a bit more broadly, coming up to level 3, it's an in-depth course. Lots of detail required, lots of geeky knowledge that we talk about, and basically, if you're keen on that, then this is the course for you. But you really do need to put in the time and the effort. And as Cathy said, probably we're going to scare you a bit because we do a lot in a few number of days and expect you to go home and practice, study, read, engage, work with your fellow students to bring it all together and reach that finishing line on the 3rd of August.
This is starting to take me back unhappily to exam time at school, but then it should be because it is quite a major piece of work to get done. Just for one further point of clarity, Andrew, before I jump into my fellow students, albeit at a more advanced stage, in terms of your understanding of wine, is this a course that, right, I pick up a glass of wine and straight away I know that this is a Slovenian Riesling from 1932, or is it something kind of more structured and technical?
I would say it's definitely more structured and technical. We're not looking to be the best game players of the blind tasting game here. What we try to look at is why things taste the way they do, how they're made, where they're made in the different ways, the styles and traditions from different wine regions, from Barolo to Rioja to Bordeaux to Burgundy. And then we also look at what we make in South Africa and how those wines from Europe compare back to the wines we make in South Africa and other regions outside of Europe like New Zealand and California. And by looking at the climatic differences between those regions, the grape varieties they choose to grow in certain places and why they choose to grow them, we give you an understanding of how wines taste like they do and why they taste like they do. So it's not really about guessing the Slovenian Riesling, but it is about understanding why that wine might taste the way it does, or smell the way it does, or present the way it does.
I am, of course, still planning to know what that Slovenian Riesling is. It's up to you to get that right for me, Andrew. So that's the basis. Let's go over to our students, find out a bit about it. Jen, I think our paths first crossed when Acid Wine Bar touched down on the rise. I know you've since moved on to new, cooler, more exciting things. Tell me a bit about your WSET journey and why you felt it was something you needed to add to your wine armory.
Yeah, well, I know we touched base last week a little bit about this, and my WSET 3 journey was a little bit of a rocky start to begin with because I didn't actually pass my first exam. I don't think I took it. I mean, I definitely took it seriously, but I don't think I really anticipated how much was going on there. But it was honestly one of the best things that I could have done for my career. I mean, I have since passed. I promise I'm not just sitting here talking as a failed student. It required a lot of hard work and a lot of critical thinking as well, which I think not a lot of people anticipate. But in terms of what it did for my career, just being able to understand wine at a level that I could then translate it better for customers. So I often say to people when I do help Andrew and Cathy teach a little bit of level 1 and 2, and when I'm speaking to the students, I say to them that our job is not to learn about all of this wine and get all of this knowledge so that we can just regurgitate all of this knowledge back to people, but rather it's a way of learning the language of wine and learning how to translate it for our customers and just be able to help them have a better experience. And for me, that was the best thing ever, just being able to understand it on a level that I could take it back into my restaurants, into my wine bar, and just be able to chat to the guys who walked in on any day and they were just like, I am having the worst day. Please, can you just help me find a glass of wine that matches the mood and everything like that? And just tell me what I want. Because most people don't want to think about it. They just want to walk in and have a good glass of wine. And that is, it was the best thing for that. I think just having that deeper level of understanding.
The premise on which we build this particular show and have from day one is that wine is broken down very simply into two categories. There's wine you like, and that's good wine, and there's wine you don't, and that's bad wine. And for me, that has to be the opening point when you're trying to introduce people to wine. But that then changes as you know and you understand more. And the more you understand why you do or don't like a bottle, the more you can understand what else you may or may not like and why you do or don't like it. How much, even for somebody like you who's got plenty of wine experience, did this clarity of process give you to know, okay, this is more about not just why I like or don't like certain wine, but how I can talk people through exactly what you've said now, guiding them into something that they're going to find is just the right glass for them?
I mean, it made a huge difference in terms of that. I think one of the biggest skills it does also teach you is how to evaluate wine objectively so that you can turn around and say, this is what makes a good wine. This is what a good wine or an outstanding wine tastes like, even though it's not my actual preference. I think that's also something we often go through when we do those systematic tastings as part of the courses is how do we evaluate wine and its level or its quality in such a way that you can still turn around to someone and say, I don't like this wine, but it's still a good wine and it's still something that you'll be able to enjoy and be able to drink. And I think that was also a really great skill to pick up because I know we all have our personal preferences, but sometimes there are really great wines out there that just don't agree with us and our palates, and vice versa. Sometimes there's terrible wines out there and we like them for whatever reasons that we like them, and that's perfectly okay. But to be able to evaluate that and actually turn around and say to my customer, I know for a fact that this is a good wine that you're going to enjoy. It is really great for that as well.
And you got successfully through WSET 3 in time, getting through as well, and now rolling on to the diploma is Tendai from the Saxon, working as a sommelier and clearly working up the ranks of the wine world very, very quickly indeed. Tendai, fair to say, if you've got through WSET 3 quite happily and you're now into your diploma and halfway there, this is a space you've not just taken to very comfortably, but that you're really enjoying.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you for inviting us, Denny. Like what Jemma just said, I also had like a little bit of trouble getting through my level 3, but I finally redid it and then I passed it. But what I've seen, like let's say when we talk about challenges with the WSET level 3 in particular, simple things like, Andrew always tell me that once you start to learn more about wine, you start to forget the simple things. For example, if let's say a question just asks you, describe a Barolo, you start to think about the technical parts of the wine, but just forgetting that it's as simple as just saying it's a wine from which part of the region, and then you have to say the color. Such things will gain you marks like in an exam. Yes.
So no, this is not going as I planned in terms of this show. First Jenna, then you telling me you failed it the first time round. I'm not getting very confident here, but you did get through it, as did. What was the secret for you to turning it around that took the initial struggle and turned it into success?
I think exactly, hard work, and also to like logical thinking, and also not to leave out like, small things that can lose you marks. Cathy always say that when you're answering a question in let's say WSET, you should write your answers like you're teaching a small child. Don't just assume that the person who's going to be marking knows what you know. So, for example, if you're talking of, let's say, a Burgundy, you have to explain that it's from France and it's a wine. Put as much information as you can, not just to answer reluctantly, as thinking that the person who's marking knows what you're saying. Yes.
And the ability to do that makes you a more polished and all-round wine presenter, which for you as a sommelier, for Jemma as somebody who works in the wine industry, both very valuable. Why then is somebody who is a commercial property consultant getting all worked up about a wine qualification? Well, let's find out from Chido. I've deliberately left for last. You are not in the day-to-day wine industry, although Instagram suggests it's becoming happily a bigger and bigger part of your life. Tell me a bit about your wine journey and how you found your way into WSET, Chido.
Sure, thanks, Dan. My journey is a bit different. As you said, I'm not in the industry at all. I think to give a brief explanation of how I got here, when I was in university, I went to UCT. I joined the Wine Society, and that kind of, I guess, introduced me to wine, that and my parents. So I kind of knew what was good wine, what wasn't, but not too much knowledge. Most students join that society to get free drinks, but I actually picked up some knowledge throughout that. And it opened up this new sort of hobby for me. Earlier in my life as well, I think around like 2016, I did some local courses. So courses revolving around South African wines, and that gave me a good base. However, I love to travel. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I always used to struggle being in an international country and ordering from the wine list. It's when you're in France, for example, even in the States, wine lists are arranged quite differently. It'll say, do you want a Chablis, which I didn't know was a Chardonnay at the time. So I was like, okay, let me do an international accredited course, and WSET kind of came up, and did level 1, I think in 2022. That was a good refresher. I mean, I don't think I needed to do it, but it was a good refresher for what I knew about wine. And then level 2, as Cathy mentioned, that is one of the most enjoyable ones. It's fun. As a consumer, it's typically a level where one would stop. But as Andrew always says, once you start this journey, it's kind of hard to stop. So I signed myself up for level 3. I won't scare you, Dan. I passed first time, so I'll give you a little bit of confidence. I passed first time, but but I will say the jump from level 2 to level 3, it was a big jump, and I can relate with you, Dan. I never saw myself going back to studying at all after I finished university. So just this WSET journey, studying and doing level 3, it was a lot for me, because the studying I needed to do for level 3, it had been a while since I'd opened a book, let's just say that. But if you want it, you'll get through it. Everyone else we spoke got through it eventually. And it's been rewarding in very big ways in my life. So based on what you mentioned, my social media, I've got social media called The Wine Auntie. It revolves around wine, but in a more approachable way. I've always found the wine industry to be a bit exclusive, or people are scared of it. So it's just my way of making it more approachable, less intimidating. It's fun for me to do as a hobby. As you mentioned, I work for a bank, I'm in finance. However, this journey of level 3 has changed my whole life. One is the social media account, which is a stress reliever for me. And 2, it has made me realize I'm not so scared of studying. I'll explain why. I actually enrolled to do a master's in marketing abroad. And if I hadn't done my level 3, I don't think I would have gotten back into the studying routine. And this master's I'm about to do in France, although it's a marketing master's, it is heavily influenced on my passion with wine, as I would want to enter into a wine marketing career, and touching on my points earlier about making wine more approachable. So that is the future goal. And that is how this wine WSET journey has changed my life.
I saw you mention that on social media earlier, how it had changed your life. I wondered exactly why. And I'm very impressed, because you have made a very, very good job of pretending that you're going to France to do a master's degree when you're heading to the country with the most established wine culture on the planet. This is very cleverly done, Chido. It looks like it's going to be a great deal of fun. Where I love your story is that in the case of your 2 fellow WSET 3 graduates, you have got people who are working day to day in the industry. You are a great example to people who are not working in the wine industry, but have a love of wine, have a passion for space. That, you know what, I want to take this a bit further. I want to really embrace it. I want to learn so much more about it, and this is the way to do it.
Yes, it's been remarkable. I was struggling with my current 9-to-5, and it's kind of, the whole journey has just kind of boosted me and given me a new energy to life, I'd say. And what you mentioned about the excuse of going to France, my parents might be streaming, so I have to act like I'm not moving for the wine.
All right, we'll pretend to believe you as a result. Just quickly before I jump back to our instructors, Jemma, when you look at what this has given you in terms of how your peers see you, how the industry sees you, how much do you feel a WSET qualification, in particular WSET 3, enhances your standing in the wine industry?
Listen, I definitely think it adds a lot of weight to your standing. I mean, it's like we've all spoken, it's no secret that it's a very, very difficult course. Again, I'm not trying to scare you. It's doable. You're going to be great. You're in great hands with Andrew and Cathy and everyone. But it is known that it is a big jump between level 2 and level 3. And I think just having WSET alone as a qualification, where people know that it's an international accreditation, it holds quite a bit of weight, not just here, but overseas as well. I definitely think it gives you a much better platform to actually speak about wine and to walk into a room and be able to say, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm not just drinking for a living and, pretending like I know what's going on. So it's big for that.
Well, speaking of the industry, quite a few people watching at the moment. Molisi Mahashi from Signature, on Morgan Stain watching from the Grendel, Derek Proud-Jones. He's always a great supporter. Lovely to have you and many others watching the show around the world at the moment. It's a special edition of Dan Really Likes Wine, looking at WSET. And Tendai, if I look at what you're doing now with this diploma, it's a 2-year course. This is not something you just do in your spare time because you decided to set aside your Netflix account for a while and concentrate on something more cerebral. This is a big, big commitment to make, but it's clearly one that you feel you've got through 3. Having this diploma now takes you to where you want to be in terms of the next step of your wine journey.
Yes, Danny, I would say moving from level 2 to level 3 with the WSET. WSET, you have to go through much extensive work and understanding. Again, like what Jemma said, not to scare you or anything, but the most important thing is that you just have to put in more time and more time. You know, everything around you, I'll say, like at the moment, everything that I do has to be like around wine. And also for myself, I think it's a bonus working at the Saxon Hotel. You know, I work as a sommelier and wine is always around me. And at home, my fiance always complained that she's now like the second best. But I think that's the key thing to do. Just a little sacrifice, and then it might change something in the future. Yes.
All right. Well, I'm not trying that one just yet. I am trying WSET 3, and I've got in Andrew and in Cathy 2 masterful instructors who, together with the rest of their team, will be guiding many of us through this particular space. And Cathy, I think what is really a standout for this, if you are a young South African, such as myself, thinking, well, wine is where I'd like to make my career, we'd all love to stay on in South Africa, but we also love to explore and get some experience around the world. And many of our young sommeliers do exactly that. And this is where this is such a bonus, in that wherever you are in the wine world, this particular qualification holds exactly the same sway.
Absolutely, because all the exams, they're all set in London and they're all marked in London as well. So, you know, Andrew and I, we mark the tasting papers in level 3, but we can do nothing about any of the theory. We can't do anything about the tasting actually either, because we also get marked on our marking, as it were. So it's not like we can fiddle anything. But this basically means that, you know, if you get your level 3, you really are as good as people who live immersed in top-class Burgundy and who swan around the London wine bars and 67 Pall Mall and all that kind of stuff. You know, you are as good as those people. You know as much as those people. And I think exactly what Jemma was saying is it gives you a massive amount of confidence to be able to go out there and hit the world. And we see students all the time. We see students with level 2 who get themselves on the cruise ships, for example. We've got a huge number of people who get themselves on cruise ships, and then that's it. They go off around the world, they earn dollars, they change their lives, literally, because they've got WSET level 2. And then people who've done level 3, and now they're coming in as marketing directors, and they're coming back as top sommeliers, and it really is a game changer. And I know that's a phrase that is a little bit overused, but honestly, I mean, these are game-changing qualifications, and I know Andrew feels the same. For us, it is a privilege. It's a real honor to actually get to teach people stuff that they can pick up that ball and then run with it and change their lives. It's the best thing we do, really.
It's such a wonderful aspect of it. And it's great that we're able to do this here in South Africa. The international point, though, Andrew, does raise a question, and it's something that you've been very kind to introduce me to at 1 or 2 events, and that's that aspect of wine from further afield. We are enormously fortunate here in South Africa to have an extraordinary array of local wine, so well priced, so good, but we don't always get quite as much access to wine from around the world. How much of a disadvantage, if any at all, is it for South African students as they try and work out what wine from Finland and Bolivia and Taiwan actually tastes like, and how we can factor that in exams that are to come?
Finland and Bolivia, we're not quite getting those exports onto the WSET program yet, but there's still quite a lot of France and a lot of Italy. So Cathy's busy practicing drinking some weird and wonderful Italian grapes as we speak. We can say that it has got better over the past few years. There is a bigger appetite for imported wine in South Africa. I think that the fact that our wines are such good quality. People like to compare them to other regions in the world, and that's where I came into this journey. I was an avid wine drinker and not in the wine industry or education at all in 2015, and did WSET 3 with Cathy back then, and then went to London to do diploma before we offered diploma here in South Africa. And since then, we've gone to a lot of trouble collectively to ensure that the wines that are covered in the diploma are readily available for the students to practice. So we collectively run tasting workshops outside of class where we bring together the students and the wines that they would taste. Have things, maybe not quite your Bolivian Chardonnay, but definitely a Hungarian ferment or a Aligote from Burgundy. These kinds of things we'll make sure that you're able to taste and experience. And then, as you mentioned, through my other brand, Wine Lab, we do wine tasting events where we specifically do call them wines from class, looking at wines that typically most South Africans only ever drink in a WSET class because you can't get them, or you just reach for another great bottle of Elgin Chardonnay.
And why wouldn't you? Part of the reason I'm just so excited about this course is it's opening up a breadth of experience in so many different spaces. I see that Chido's dad is watching the show. Simon Chikumbu, great show from Chido's dad. Mr. Chikumbu, if you weren't watching earlier, Chido did confirm she's only going to France to drink wine. She's not planning to study at all, and she's going to spend every cent she has on expensive first growths and Premier Cruise and Grand Cruise. Chido, nice to have your dad supporting you there. I'm sure you had support from many people. I'm now drawing on support from you guys. What's the support you can give me? Just a couple of basics, a couple of tips that really helped you to get through WSET 3.
I think one of the things that so going into my exam, I was worried, I was scared, it was a lot. And I think one of the crucial things I didn't do was when I signed up for the course for level 3, I got the books quite early, and they do advise you to start reading through the book. I didn't, and I regretted that quite intensely. So I would say as soon as you get the material, start going through it just so it's easier to digest during classes. Another thing that helped, I think, again, in your class, it's quite an intimate class in terms of members in level 3, students in level 3. So having some work groups with them also helps a lot. Meeting after class or some WhatsApp groups, just giving each other some hints, that helped me a lot. The last thing I would say is at the end of each class we had, I would immediately go home, open a bottle of wine that I didn't know much of, have a blind tasting. My brother would test me. I mean, I could have said anything and he would have agreed, but just to keep the momentum going. Once you take a break with the studies and the tastings, I think it's harder to jump back into the studies, but once you have a momentum going, I think it helps a lot to push through.
Just a quick check, Chido. Would that have been your brother Kudzi?
No. Again, it looks like my whole family's here. Kudzi, I've got another brother who I actually convinced to do level 1. He just did level 1 with Andrew and Jemma recently, and he's going to do level 2. So I would do tastings with him. Kudzi is my brother. He's based in the States. Shout out to him. He kind of forced me to do level 3 or motivated me. So it's nice to see him in here. But again, I think seeing my family in here again is another tip, is also just having a good support system around you, people who want to push you in this wine journey, people you can taste wine with after a session.
I think your dad's getting a bit worried. You're going off to France to pretend to study because he's supposedly in America. He's actually on a beach in Mexico drinking tequila at the moment. The whole family's having a great time, but clearly a wonderful family. Makoro koto sekuru chikumbu. You've done a great job there. Tendai, sticking with our Zimbabwean theme. Tendai, when you got through yours, you had to pick yourself up, obviously, after that first little bump in the road. Were there any particular study skills, particular aspects of what you did that just made it that little bit easier to finally get through?
I'll say nothing in particular. It's only that something that makes it easy across the journey of wine. I've got a great interest of history. You know, even at school, I've always been fascinated by history. So with this wine studies, I feel like my better understanding comes from my initial interest in history. Yes.
All right, I'm a lover of history as well, so that will help also. We'll get a quick word before I jump over to Jemma, just on that diploma so far. You've all said we're going to try not to scare you and have then terrified me just about level 3. How scary is the diploma proving at the moment, Tendai?
I would say the diploma is a lot of work. So let me just take you through how it's structured. So it's 6 modules, and then you've got 2 that are the foundation, which is viticulture and viniculture, and then business, and then you've got D6, which is like an independent research module, and then you've got D3, which is a mammoth. It's got that, which is wines of the world. And then you've got D5, which is fortified wines, and D4, which is sparkling wines. So I would say, to be honest, you have to invest a lot of time into it. So I would say the biggest thing, the biggest investment you'll have in this course is your time, because you have to keep on researching. You know, it's not just you cannot just use what's in the material that's been provided to you. You have to have a little bit of understanding of business. So I started watching business news recently just to understand certain things when in my course at the moment. Yes.
All right, and that leads to, I think, what's also a very pertinent question. Jemma, you're very much in the business of wine at the moment, working in a number of different spaces. What of that aspect? What for people who are watching this thinking, yeah, this sounds good, but is there another dimension to it? Can this help take me into the business side of wine? How much has that helped you in terms of what you find yourself doing today?
I mean, it's again, definitely helped so much in every aspect. I don't think there's very few bad things I can actually say about the WSET and the level 3 in general. It definitely gave me a much bigger love for the business of wine, if that makes sense. Before I started, I didn't feel, like there was actually a huge future in wine. When I go all the way back to doing my level 1 so many years ago, I thought I was just going in there to have a bit of fun and to learn a little bit more about this drink and drink some wine. And as I got further along in my journey, it really expanded my horizons and opened my eyes to what those horizons were in terms of what was possible for wine. So I'm also looking forward to hopefully doing my level 4 at some point in time. And I'm particularly excited about that business module that it involves, because there's so much to it that I would have never imagined. And I think that's also one of my favorite things about learning about wine, is that there's always something new to learn about. It never ends. It's never like, I know it's like that with most things, but it's never like, I know everything now, so I'm good to go. It's just constantly opening new doors and new opportunities and new things to learn.
And that's what you've been doing to other people. Jonathan Hiles watching over on YouTube. Shout out to Jemma from the Blank Bottle team. She's a great tutor and mentor. That's lovely endorsement to get. Let's jump back to our team of professionals then as we wrap up this look ahead to WSET 3 and WSET in general. I shall be getting this underway. I know Cathy's already mentioned it, but worth repeating, Andrew, such has been the uptake for level 2 that you've had to put in a whole new course for people in Johannesburg to get involved with.
Yeah, that's true. We're running a whole series of level 1, level 2, and the level 3 you're joining, Dan, starting next week. The level 2 that was on 2 Saturdays is sold out. So we've introduced one now that'll be on Sunday the 14th and Sunday the 21st of July. All courses happening at the venue at Melrose Arch in Johannesburg. So they've got great facilities there that we're very gratefully helping us with really good rates so that the rates can be kept affordable for students like yourself. And that's all we'll be holding them in July. So if anyone is still looking at joining up after this, then you can go over to the winecentre.co.za and log on there and book a place for the extra level 2s that we've put on.
We've had some advice from the successful level 3 students. What's your word of counsel, Andrew? What should I really be focusing on as I get ready to return to study?
Well, firstly, you should only drink wine you haven't heard much about in the next month. That would be my first advice. Secondly, I'd echo what Chido said. Have a good look at the book in advance. Go through it, and then lean on friends, not just the 4 of us online tonight, but your classmates are going to be invaluable. And the more you can do and share with them, the more you're going to keep yourself fresh with the content, with talking about wine in a confident way, which I know you seem to think you can do every Monday night. But we're going to teach you more things that you don't know about, Dan. Promise that. You'll learn to like wines that you've never heard of and learn how and why they taste the way they do.
Believe me, Andrew, there is a vast amount of knowledge still to be filled in when it comes to wine with me. Monday is a very cheerfully indulgent facade. I look forward to backing it up with some actual knowledge. Thanks to WSET over the next stretch. Cathy, just to wrap up, one of the things that when I look at the success of this, and you've already spoken about the number of people from South Africa who've gone abroad to places like the cruise ships. I think it's one of the many endorsements we have of the South African wine industry that we have so many people taking up WSET exams, passing them, and showing that we have a real aptitude for not just learning this kind of topic, but applying it very successfully as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we have, somms who are sailing the world, not just as somms, but they're restaurant managers. They are, sort of high up in the buying chain. It's awesome. And do you know what's actually really good is that what you're seeing is that these are South African people who are going out internationally, and they're not just showing that they know about Burgundy and Barolo and everything. They're actually taking their South African wines with them. So they're actually brand ambassadors just by being there themselves. And ultimately that has got to be good for the whole rest of the industry, that people are out there talking about South Africa, saying, I'm from South Africa, look how great our wines are, they're amazing. And that's only going to uplift the whole of the industry. And I think that's awesome. That's really, really good that we have these internationally recognized qualifications that people can pick up and run with. So yeah, that's what I hope is going to happen. In terms of what you're going to encounter in the next few weeks, Dan, I would just say something that I say on every single course is that there are no stupid questions except for the ones you don't ask. Okay, I can absolutely promise you that me and Andrew and Jemma and all our other lecturers, we've almost certainly asked every single stupid question there ever is to know. I promise you. And we've asked it and we've heard it. And literally, there is nothing worse than people sitting in a class and really wanting to know something, but thinking that, oh, I don't want to ask, they might think I'm thick. Honestly, ask us the question. Please ask the question, because that's really how you're going to pass this thing. Asking all those questions, making the connections between what happens in the vineyard, what happens in the cellar, what do I taste in the wine. If you can make those links, then you're going to do really, really well on level 3.
And that's a fabulous piece of advice to wrap up, not just for me, but for people who might be thinking of it. I see Grant Sauls is watching the show, as he so often does. It sounds interesting. Thanks, Dan. I'll check it out. I see Poe Sugar is watching on Instagram. I think Poe's got WSET 2, if I'm not mistaken. And Poe, maybe there's 3 on the horizon. Sandy Lefebvre from Vonderling watching at the moment, and the Mellish Family Vineyards team watching there as well. So lovely to have people in the industry, which just reflects what we knew before the show started anyway. And that is how much interest there is in this gold standard of wine education, which is exactly why I am jumping on board for the next round of my own academic journey in the world of wine. And so as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go and find a bottle of Sudanese Cinsault and sit down and start pouring through my textbooks to see what this course has in store. Guys, thank you to all of you. You could have been a little more encouraging to my Jemma, Tendai, and Chido, but you've also given me probably a useful reminder that I should be spending some time on the textbooks, which I certainly will do. Cathy, Andrea, I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of the WSET family, and I'm really excited about getting going. I foresee myself in detention regularly next week, but in and amongst all of that, there's lots of wonderful learning to be had. And hopefully, Chido and Tendai and Jemma, in a month or two's time, I'll be introducing you as my fellow WSET 3 students, by which stage you lot will probably have diplomas by then. But thank you all. Tendai, good luck with the diploma work. Chido, good luck with persuading your dad. It's a real degree you're off to do in France. And there'll be seeing plenty of you around the wine industry here in Johannesburg. And Cathy, Andrew, my blazer is pressed. I have my tie ready. My lunchbox is good to go. And I shall be pitching up ready for school next week with due excitement.
Cheers.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we
Cheers,
go. Thanks. All right, so that is my WSET 3. It starts next week. Exams first weekend of August. Sure, if guys of that quality have missed an exam, then I do have some work to do. So let me get off to those textbooks. I will leave you until next week. Next week, we say goodbye to South Africa and we head up to West Africa. The Wines of South Africa team are visiting Ghana and Nigeria, and we're going to be joining some very influential wine figures from West Africa, finding out how South African wine is faring in Accra and in Lagos, and getting a sense of Woza adventures on the continent. It's a space I'm not sure we always put quite as much thought into as a destination for South African wine. There is great potential, and we'll find out more about that on next Monday's show with Wines of South Africa as we head to Ghana and to Nigeria. Right now, I'm heading through to a warm fireplace, a good glass of wine, and some textbooks. Enjoy the rest of the evening. A big thank you to the WSET team. Really excited about joining them. Grateful for the opportunity. And if it's something you hadn't thought of, maybe now you will. If you had considered it but weren't sure, maybe you're a little more so. And if you are, like me, going to be doing one of the courses, whichever one may be, good luck. You're in for something special, a bit of hard work, but rich reward and even greater wine knowledge as a result. That wraps us up for today. Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. Have a lovely Monday evening. See you next time. Goodbye.